Alright, hey everybody. Today we are going to be continuing the work that we started on, what was it, Saturday? Of upgrading elm-html-test for Elm 19. So I think the first part of that already got up on YouTube for those of you that need to catch up later or are interested in catching up later. And the other parts are still in the Twitch archives. So I think that's what I'm going to try to do for the schedule. Like the recordings will be up on Twitch for like 2 weeks or whatever the default setting is, and then I will get them to YouTube by the time they expire there. So, happy Monday. I hope everyone's having a good week so far. So, I am ready to jump right into this. So, let's figure out where we were last. As I recall, we had 3 separate repositories because there were 2 dependencies of elm-html-test. And basically we're taking all 3 of those and incorporating them into Elm Explorations Test, which is the new name of the testing package in Elm 19. And we're also condensing all these packages into one kind of unified package for testing. So let's see, I think this is just called test. Let's get Visual Studio Code up. And oh yeah, also on Saturday, we were experimenting with some Visual Studio Code plugins. You can see them here on the screen. We've got rainbow brackets, which are highlighting the matching brackets in rainbow colors, and we also have rainbow indent, which is highlighting the indentations. Oh, and it doesn't like this indentation. So we were experimenting with rainbow colored indentation and highlighting in here. I'm not sure if I like it, but let's stick with it for another day or two. All right. So I think we have some failing tests for what we need to deal with next. So yeah, basically a recap of Saturday is that we took the elm-html-test module, we pulled most of it over, we pulled one or maybe both of its dependencies over. Oh yeah, I also made a to-do list here. So we're still working on get tests to compile. Then one of the other dependencies had a couple tests of its own, which we need to pull in later. And then some other things to do to clean up. So we're still on this first part of getting elm-html's tests to compile in the new repository. So running npm test, and I'm just gonna set this up to clear my console every time I run it. Okay, so elm HTML test event. Looks like it's complaining about toString. This is a, oops, can I jump to the correct line? Line 86. toString message. Let me split this to separate line. Okay. Okay. And I guess here's another place where we're potentially going to have a problem, because we can't use toString anymore in packages, in Elm packages that we want to publish. So we can only convert certain things to strings. We can convert ints and floats to strings, and if we know what the type is, we can convert those to strings as well. However, message, we cannot convert to string. Oh, actually I'm forgetting something important though. The test package itself actually has the special ability, I guess, to convert things to strings, because I know we use that elsewhere in the test library itself. Where is that? So it doesn't use native code, but I guess maybe it can just import debug directly? No, it's not doing that. Okay. Let's search for toString, because I'm sure this is being done somewhere in the code. So here in expect, okay, internal.toString. So what is that? Internal comes from test.internal. And toString here. I see. So because test is a special package with special permissions, we're able to pull in kernel.debug directly. Okay, great. So this is a case where we're going to want to use that as well, because this is basically the same use case that expect is using. We want to be able to print out the debug information about the actual value. And yeah, one of the reasons toString was removed from from the core of Elm, or it's still in the core of Elm, but excuse me. In Elm 19, toString was moved to the debug package and added the restriction that you can't use it in any published packages. But elm-test is an exception because the tests always run in debug mode, whereas any other package, the Elm compiler can't guarantee that it'll only be used when compiled in debug mode. And if you do use toString in debug mode, you just get a bunch of basically garbage printed out because it's all obfuscated and optimized code. So, internal. So we can basically just import this and make use of it. Although I'm still going to check all these toString places and places where we're just converting ints and floats or other simple types. We should avoid using this internal package as much as possible. But this is a case where we're actually going to need it. And let's see, what was that? Test.internal? Yes. All right, let's see what's next. All right, okay. Great. And this is another case where the JSON decode package in Elm 19 changed slightly. It now returns a JSON decode error instead of just a string error. So what does this return? ToResult. Returns a result. What package are we in? This is test HTML event. Okay. So this is used to return the message that's produced by the event simulated on a node. Okay. I'm looking at this to see whether we want this function to return the decoder error or if we just want to convert it back to a string. I think people using this would want the string more than the JSON error because the JSON error would be kind of a problem with the internals of this package if something went wrong. So let's just take this and let's see. We have a result decode error and we want to convert the error case to string. So we should be able to use result.mapError and decode dot error to string is a function we discovered in the docs on Saturday. Let's see how that goes. 127. Okay, that did not help. Oh, wait, that is actually backwards. Let me see this first error again. The argument, what is this saying? Oh, I see. So this is giving us a result, and then this is a function that takes a value and also returns a result. And the error types for both of those results need to match because we're basically joining them with this and then. Okay. So that means we actually need to convert the result here. Decode dot error to string. I think that's what this is saying. Let's try this out. Okay, cool. Looks like that fixed that. So now we're on to source descendant. I don't know what this file is. And it's not even letting me click it. Descendant. Oh, I see. This is in tests. Okay, so we're on to another test module. Import test HTML query. Right, okay. So I think this is the same problem that we ran into once already on Saturday, where this module, okay, so the tests are kind of compiled in their own project, which is kind of set up in a weird way. And basically this module needs to be exposed by elm-test itself so that the tests here have access to it. So in elm.json, we need to expose this. Okay, I think that's the problem. All right, so this I'm assuming is a similar thing. Attributes, yep, this is a test file. And selector internal. Okay, so this is another one we need to expose. However, this is a module that we don't actually want to publish when we publish the package. So I actually have this noted in my to-do list. We need to one by one remove things that we don't want to publish. So this is going to include this. So I'm just going to add this here for now so we can get the test to compile and then fix any test failures that we legitimately have. But then before we actually merge this branch and publish it, we need to remove this here, which I think in this case is going to mean we need to refactor the test suite so that it doesn't depend on this internal package and is only testing around the public interface of this module. So we'll get to that later, but for now this should let us move forward. And okay, so now it's complaining that this module doesn't have documentation. So I guess we just need to add it for now. I'll just put to do, don't expose this module. And that's going to be necessary, I guess, on all of these other things that it exposes. Yeah, okay. So we have to add all these just to get this to compile. So again, this is stuff that we'll be coming back to clean up later, but I want to just get the tests compiling and running first. So that means we're going to need this. And we need selector has all named attribute. No, these are all in a different order. Named bool attribute, query all, query all children. What else is in here? Selector to string and style to string. Okay. So that should get us moving forward again. Okay, cool. And then this looks like the same problem again. Test HTML descendant. I believe this is also a package that we ultimately don't want to expose. Yeah, because it has no documentation. But for the moment, we'll just be adding it here so we can get the test to work. So we'll add it to our to-do list to hide again later. I'm done with this one. And this is going to need docs also. And is descendant. All right, let's see how that goes. Great. And then we're on to the next one, which is also in descendant in HTML inert. This is a module that previously was exposed, but it was exposed in one of those dependency packages, not in the main elm-test package. So this is another one that we are only temporarily going to expose, and we'll later do some refactoring of the tests so that we can keep this private. And I guess this already has docs because it used to be exposed, so that's nice at least. Oh, but it doesn't have complete documentation. Maybe it wasn't exposed. Huh, I'm not sure why this didn't have docs then. All right, so we'll need all these. And then we have this from HTML, from elm-html, parse attribute, and to elm-html. All right, and now we've got more of the same. Elm-html internal types. Yeah, that sounds like another one we're not going to want to expose publicly. I think also probably a lot of these modules can be collapsed into a smaller set of modules now that they're all in the same repository. But we'll look at that later. And this actually has a bunch of documentation already, so maybe we're good to go with the comments. All right, then test HTML selector. This is actually one that should be published. Yeah, event, query, and selector. Those are the main three modules for elm-html-test. And all right, on to some variable name shadowing again. 246, style equals style. All right, this is a list, so this should really be called styles probably. Great, that was an easy one. All right, now what is going on here? Let's get to the right file, line 193. Okay, matches elements that have the given attribute in a way that makes sense for their semantics. Okay, so this is the attribute selector, and you give it an attribute and it will find HTML in your test that has the selected attribute. Okay, first pattern in the case is causing a mismatch. First pattern, oh, you can see, and it's a problem with the pattern matches. First pattern is trying to match attribute values. Oh, I see. It's that the pattern matches don't match the expression. Okay. This is not what, this seems like something I wasn't expecting to see, so. Oh, actually, here's the problem. Okay. Got it. So one of them is just the attribute, the other's a result of string and attribute. So this must be because we changed one of the function types. I don't remember changing this one though. Inert parse attribute. Let's check what we did on Saturday. Alright, so that's HTML inert. Oh, I guess this doesn't show a diff of what we did versus what we copied from in the beginning. I guess here's parse attribute. I see. This was probably a place where we had a debug.crash and had to replace it with a result. Okay. So that's all an internal package. So I think it's probably good to keep this as returning a result. And looking through these branches also, there's a wildcard match that just returns invalid as a selector if things are wrong. So it seems pretty safe to just say that we'll only match OK values for the result. And then the error case will fall into this branch, which already was a catch-all branch, which will be invalid. I don't quite know what invalid means for a selector, but it seems safe enough to do here. All right, on to source queries. Well, let's start with this one. Source attributes. And I think that's a test file. All right, line 32. The function cannot handle the argument sent through the pipe. The argument, which is this, is a function. Ah, okay. Oh, interesting. So this was another big change in Elm-19. In the HTML package, style used to be a function that took a list of tuples of strings where you had the name of the CSS style and the value of the CSS style over here. And now it's been changed to basically be two arguments. It just takes the pair of values independently, and then if you have more than one style, you just create multiple attributes and tack them onto your element, and elm-html does the job of merging them all into a single style attribute. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out with elm-html-test. I guess we'll find out, but we may have to refactor this these style selectors somehow. And I hope there's a good test suite for that, because I feel like that's kind of going to be some risky changes. All right, what's next? In source events 167, we also have toString, and I think this is just a string, right? Oh, I see. This is a JSON value. Does Elm have a way to turn a JSON value into a string? Let's see. It must, right? JSON, probably in the encode package. Oh, right. JSON encode.encode. Okay, I think we can use that because this should be a JSON value here. And we'll pass 0 so that it doesn't pretty print it. And how is encode imported? As encode, okay. All right, on to the next file. Queries.elm 361. Okay, and this is the same issue we were just talking about. What is this? Sample HTML. Oh, this actually builds some HTML. Okay, cool. So we'll need to reformat this a bit. And let's see. Is there a good way to do this? I guess we'll take this, adder.style, and delete that, and kill that, kill that. Okay, so that should be the equivalent code for that. I guess there's a handful of these we're going to need to do. I guess there's only about 8, so let's just go through these by hand. There aren't too many. Actually, and most of them don't use styles either, so that's nice. And then we'll split these. Red, purple, bold, is that the same? That's the same as this. So we can just grab that. Okay, let's see how that goes. Ooh, okay. So we have for the first time successfully compiled the tests, and there are, yikes, lots of errors, 112 failures. All right, well, I guess we have some work to do here, but I guess let's make a whip commit on here, and then we can, I'll probably be rebasing all of these commits and rewriting the history to be cleaned up a bit more before this gets merged, but at least for the moment, I think it's nice to be able to keep track of what's changing each step as we go. Cool. I guess normally I would go through all of these diffs, but I think I'm happy with everything here, and I'm not too concerned about the history right now. I'm still not sure where this keeps coming from. I wonder if the VS Code plugin keeps recreating this or something. In any case, we do not need those. All right, so the pulled in elm-html-tests compile. but don't pass. Actually, may as well say 112 failures. Is that the right number? Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So, I guess there's a lot of tests here. I'm not sure what the best... I guess let's do one thing first. Let's make sure that the only failing tests are the elm-html tests. So we possibly could have broken something else in what we were doing. Okay, great. So only the new tests are failing. So I guess, let's try just some of these. Not sure which. I feel like selectors is would maybe be the simplest because queries depend on selectors. Events are more advanced stuff. I don't know what descendant is. Attributes, I guess, is just for specifying attributes, but that would depend on selectors. I don't know. Let's just try running the attributes one and see what we get. Ah, interesting. Okay. So here we're getting stuff where selectors, we're getting invalid selectors instead of, basically all of these are invalid. So coincidentally, we just changed a function to return invalid in new case. So likely something's wrong with that, potentially. I guess we should also try to debug what's wrong. I guess the other big thing that we've changed is we had some native code that we had to pull over, which is here, which is the code that converts HTML into JSON. Yeah, okay, so the way this works is a little bit complicated. We basically have some kernel code which can convert HTML into JSON values. Then there's some code that decodes that JSON into this elm-html type here. And then there's this inert stuff. I guess inert HTML, that is, it can't do anything with events. I'm not really sure what that means, but that seems to just be a wrapper for elm-html, and then all these queries and selectors, I believe, operate on this inert type, which is really just operating on these elm-html data structures. So I guess one question I have is whether this native code or kernel code, it's called an elm-19, is being called in our test. It probably is, and I'm also suspecting that this is probably not hooked up correctly, so probably something is like getting nil instead of the JSON value, and then just everything's failing to decode. That's my guess, at least. But I'd like to figure out a way to kind of keep track of what's going on. So let's go and find these tests that are failing, and let's bring it down to just one test that we can run and focus on that. Let me just close all of these right now. And we had tests, then we're only running attributes. Okay, that's attributes. And can generate a string attribute. Okay, I think that's probably failing. Let's just see if that one single test fails. Okay, cool. And what is this error? To do in module runner.log on line 79. Huh, maybe we should look at that. Runner.log. Oh, I see. This is just the custom test runner that we have to use here that just prints stuff out. So this stuff we can all kind of just ignore. This is just a hacky way that this particular project is using to have a test runner, because we didn't want it to depend on the elm-test command line tool, because this is a dependency of that tool. Okay, so we can ignore that, and then this is the legitimate error we're getting. Attributes. Okay, so what does this do? This makes an attribute, a title attribute, with the value test. Then we call selector.attribute, which does what? Okay, and this is the function we just changed earlier. I see. So given a particular attribute, this creates a selector that will match that attribute. Okay. And then we check what we get. Okay, I'm going to add some debug.logs in here. And let's see what the values are at those points. Huh. Interestingly, it printed the error twice this time. Maybe it did that last time, I'm not sure. Okay, so the first time we get A2 title internals. And I guess this is a value created by what, elm-html itself? Yeah. Okay, so this is not super useful. I guess the other interesting thing I'm noticing is that why would this actually be calling the kernel code? Because we don't actually have any HTML. I guess we should look at what this is doing. I guess we can also put a debug.log here. Let's call this C. Okay, so what do we have there? Ah, okay. So things are already wrong at that point. Error internally processing attribute for testing. Okay, so where does this message come from? And it's from inert. Presumably it's in the parse attributes function. Ah, yes, and it is. Okay. And the JSON error is this. Problem with the given value. Okay. New line, undefined, new line. And it's expecting an object. Okay. So clearly that is an incorrect JSON value. So that presumably is this attribute to JSON. Ah, okay. An attribute to JSON is calling kernel code. It's not kernel code that I remember anything about, so let's take a look at it. So attribute to JSON is here, and this is all it did in the previous code. Let's just throw here and make sure this code is getting executed. Yeah, okay, so this is getting executed. I guess we can console.log attribute. And let's see what it is. Okay, so attribute is this value, which looks like it's the constructor. Its constructor is A2. It's got the title name. It's got a value, I guess. I'm sure there's a reason behind why it's implemented this way, but it looks like it is a title attribute with the value test in whatever way this is modeled. And we are supposedly returning that, which seems correct. And then when we get it back, we should have a JSON value. This should be JSON. Or, well, it's kind of confusing in Elm. It should be a JavaScript object, which at runtime for Elm should be the same as a JSON.encode.value. A JSON.value. Okay. So let's double check with that. This should be a JSON value. Huh. I guess I'm curious, why don't we compare this to what JSON.encode would actually create real quick. So we'd have JSON.encode.object, and we'd have like $JSON.encode.string A2, something like that. And do we import JSON.encode? No. Okay. So let's see that print out. Huh. So they're different things. Let's console log this again. So an object with a dollar field, that, then if we have n and JSON encode string title, and then we have O, which is a JSON encode object, which then has a dollar field, which is JSON encode int 0, and an A field, which is JSON encode.string test. Okay, so this should be the same value as this. So if these print out differently, then I'm not really sure what's going on. That's O. Oh, forgot a comma here. Yeah, these are printing completely differently. And I am not understanding why. I guess we can try sending them both to the kernel code to have them logged. guess we'll take this and instead of doing this, we'll just call our kernel function with this object so it'll print it out and return it. Okay, so our first one, this one, why are these so different? We're getting attribute. I want to check something else real quick, which is this decoder that we're trying to use, decode attribute. What does that actually look like? Let's look at this. Decode attribute. Decode one of either the field with an attribute key. Okay. So it seems like probably the internal representation in elm-html of these attributes has changed. So I guess that's one problem. But it doesn't explain to me like why we're getting this undefined here. And it also doesn't explain to me why these two values are different. Alright, so let's find that code again. So if let's try saving this to a value here. Constructed JSON equals that. Comment this out for the moment. And this should match the JSON that I think this attribute is supposed to be giving us. But instead of that for the moment, let's try debugging the constructed JSON and see what that looks like. Okay, so problem with given value. So this actually looks like it's seeing the JSON that it's supposed to be getting, so that's good. This should be a JSON value that says internals. That's fine. So as far as I can tell, this is the error we should be getting when we have this original code, and I am not understanding why we're not. So if we print our attribute, debug.log, attribute is this. This is attribute to JSON. Yeah, so those are the same. But yeah, what I don't understand is why these print differently than this value when we print it out. Because as far as I can tell, they should be the same thing. I guess maybe we need to look at the source code for decode value and see what it's doing that might cause a difference in that. So JSON decode value. Let's go look at that. That'll be here in JSON, in source JSON decode. So this just calls run. It's an interesting name in the Elm kernel JSON code. Okay, so here's the function. We'll get a decoder, we'll get a value. And then we call run help with the decoder and JSON unwrap of the value. Okay, so I'm suspicious of this unwrap because that could be making a difference. JSON unwrap. Oh, interesting. That is returning value.a. Ah, okay. So what I'm starting to suspect from this is that the internal representation of JSON values has also changed. Which would explain that extra layer of wrapping that I was seeing earlier when we took this and passed it to our print function. It had an extra A thing around it. Okay, so that's starting to make sense. So the dollar is this. What is that? Whoops, where can I find this value? Whoa. Oh, all my editor keystrokes don't work in Firefox. Huh, that's interesting. Oh, I wonder if this... Oh, I see. Okay. This must be like the special kernel code syntax for defining enums. Okay, so that's why it's A2, because it's just some generated identifier. Okay. Oops, how do I exit full screen mode here? Escape. Okay. So this is giving me hope because I feel like I'm starting to understand what I was seeing here. So if we have attribute to JSON, I think what this means is, I wonder if we can actually refer to these things. I guess we'll find out. So I'm thinking we actually need to return an object here with $that. And basically, oh, interesting. There's different production and debug mode versions of this. So it's only in debug mode that things get wrapped with this extra layer, and in production, it just uses the values directly. So I guess really what we want is to use this wrap function, elm kernel JSON wrap. Let's see. So how do we import stuff in here? We want to import elm kernel.json exposing wrap and if we have an attribute, to turn it into valid JSON, we need to wrap it. Oops, where did wrap go? Okay. And we call that with JSON wrap. Yeah, I'm not really sure what I'm looking for here. I was trying to find the first function that we found in here, but I guess it doesn't matter. So let's return JSON wrap of attribute. Okay. Let's see how that goes. Great. Okay. So, I guess let me double check all the stuff we changed and make sure we're printing what I think we're printing. But we are now getting an error message saying it couldn't decode this JSON, and the JSON now looks like some actual JSON instead of undefined. So I'm feeling like that is successful. So let's go through the changes we had and make sure, or like get rid of our extra debugging. Okay, so I'm feeling good that this is the actual problem that was wrong right there. So we do not need to import that. Let's just go clean this up in the editor. Inert. We don't need any of this. We do not need our debug log. We do not need this. Okay, and then this is using attribute to JSON, which is our kernel function. Decoding it. Okay, that's the correct error there. Okay, so this, we can get rid of the debug log there. We can get rid of these debug logs. And this stuff will keep commented out for the moment. Same with this. Okay. Where is the error? I guess I still wanted to print this error. So we do want to debug.log, I guess after we get that, which is we call parse attribute. That's on the selector. Okay. Debug.log, parsed attribute. Okay, and this should be our same error message. Great, we see the JSON in here. Okay, so that's perfect, I was gonna say. I guess we're really committing at this point that this is probably only gonna work in debug mode, which I guess is fine. I'm curious, maybe in production mode it actually creates the DOM attribute objects? Not really sure. Interesting. So I guess the next step is to update the decoder for these attributes, since that format seems to have completely changed. And then I guess maybe we'll be close to getting this first test passing. Hopefully that'll fix almost all, if not all of the tests in this file, and then we can move on to the next one. So before we do that, I am going to take a short break. So feel free to take one yourself. I guess I don't need to say that. But when I come back, we will look at decoding this, and hopefully that'll go smoothly. After that, I think I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. But let's take a short break now. I'll see y'all back in just a few minutes.